Today is February 1. And today is, in fact, the birthday of Langston Hughes, one of America's finest poets, writers, short story teller, travel writer, global traveler, just a phenomenal person in many ways. And sometime in the fall, my good man here, Matt, had approached me to say, hey, do you know that February 1 is going to be the 115th birthday of Langston Hughes? Of course, being the kind of teacher I am, of course I know. That was where he then said, how about us organizing something, a kind of reading, some kind of event to mark the birthday, and I was all in. And so I want to thank Matt for bringing this to our community, and I want to thank all of you for coming here and participating. I'm going to turn over to Matt for now to have some opening statements, and then I will read just a little segment of Langston Hughes, the Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain, to kick off stuff before Haley and the rest will come in. We are sandwiching Dr. Crystal Lucky's remarks in between the readings, so that will be coming down in the evening. But for clearer information on how we're going to proceed tonight, Matt.
Thank you, Chief. Yes. Good afternoon.
I am using part of that in the talk,
actually came from Sierra
the
Leone,
Negro art.
during an IGR project that we were doing, trying to integrate VU Pride efforts and BCS efforts on campus. So we also are indebted to her today. I wanted to do this because I wanted to, especially for Black History Month, I wanted to advance at least some sort of intersectional effort across the groups on campus. And Chiji was kind enough to help me along the way with this and remind me a couple weeks ago that I agreed to do this when I agreed about it. So just so everyone knows what's going to happen, we're going to have a couple poems, and then Dr. Lucky will speak, and then we'll have more poems, one short story, and then Chiji will close out with 2 or 3 poems. So Haley, would you like to start? Oh wait, no, Chiji, you said you wanted to begin with the other thing.
Just a quick announcement. I'm gonna skip on the Negro artists, for now. Just an announcement that next Monday, the 6th, right here, 4:30, we'll be having our official Black History Month lecture. And it will feature Professor James Peterson of Lehigh University, but you probably see him on TV, one of well-known pundits. He also, hosts a podcast for WHYY, the public radio, local radio station. So that's next Monday, the 6th of February, 4:30 p.m., right here at Speaker's Corner. And the title of his talk is "We the People, Corrective Art and Hip-Hop Culture in the Era of Trump." So I hope that you come, tell your friends about it. Haley.
Dreams. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow. Life is fine. I went down to the river, I sat down on the bank. I tried to think, but couldn't, so I jumped in and sank. I came up once and hollered, I came up twice and cried. If that water hadn't been so cold, I might have sunk and died. But it was cold in that water. It was cold. I took the elevator 16 floors above the ground. I thought about my baby and thought I would jump down. I stood there and I hollered. I stood there and I cried. If it hadn't been so high, I might have jumped and died. But it was high up there. It was high. So since I'm still here living, I guess I will live on. I could have died for love, but for living I was born. Though you may hear me holler, and you may see me cry, I'll be dogged, sweet baby, if you're gonna see me die. Life is fine, fine as wine, life is fine. As I grew older. It was a long time ago. I have almost forgotten my dream. But it was there then in front of me, bright like a sun, my dream. And then the wall rose slowly, slowly, between me and my dream, rose until it touched the sky. The wall, shadow. I am black. I lie down in the shadow. No longer the light of my dreams before me, above me. Only the thick wall, only the shadow, my hands, my dark hands. Break through the wall, find my dream. Help me to shatter this darkness, to smash this night, to break this shadow into 1,000 lights of sun, into 1,000 whirling dreams of sun.
Good afternoon. Called a poet for the people by some, and a Poe laureate, as opposed to a poet laureate, by others, James Mercer Langston Hughes was born on February 1st, 1902 in Joplin, Missouri. Langston Hughes, as he would become known, was born into a deeply divided America, scarred by racial prejudice and challenged by differing views of the best way for newly freed and often traumatized black people to move forward into this new century. The year that he was born, 85 black people were lynched. The practice continued until 1968, officially, a year after his death. On October 16th, the year before, after an afternoon meeting at the White House with Booker T. Washington, President Theodore Roosevelt informally invited the unofficial leader of the black community to remain and eat dinner with him, making Booker T. Washington the first black American to dine at the White House with an American president. Everyone wasn't so happy. A furor arose over the social implications of Roosevelt's casual act. And yet, when Hughes was only a year old, possibility turned into promise with the publication of The Souls of Black Folk, W.E.B. Du Bois's beautiful musing on black progress. I'd like to read a passage from it. Then it dawned upon me with a certain suddenness that I was different from the others, or like, mayhap, in heart and life and longing, but shut out from their world by a vast veil. I had thereafter no desire to tear down that veil, to creep through. I held all beyond it in common contempt and lived above it in a region of blue sky and great wandering shadows. That sky was bluest when I could beat my mates at examination time, or beat them at a foot race, or even beat their stringy heads. Alas, with the years, all this fine contempt began to fade. For the worlds I longed for and all their dazzling opportunities were theirs, not mine. But they should not keep these prizes, I said. Some, all, I would wrest from them. Just how I would do it, I could never decide. By reading law, by healing the sick, by telling the wonderful tales that swam in my head, some way. With other black boys, the strife was not so fiercely sunny. Their youth shrunk into tasteless sycophancy, or into silent hatred of the pale world about them and mocking distrust of everything white, or wasted itself in a bitter cry, why did God make me an outcast and a stranger in mine own house? The shades of the prison house closed round about us all, walls straight and stubborn to the whitest, but relentlessly narrow, tall and unscalable to sons of night who must plod darkly on in resignation, or beat unavailing palms against the stone, or steadily, half hopelessly watch the streak of blue above. For Du Bois, the image of the blue sky signals the endless possibilities of life for black people in the years following slavery, Reconstruction, and its awful, violent aftermath. racial integration, evenly matched competition, access to education and freedom to work, think, and to create. And for me, this is really important because it signals the kind of world that Hughes would have been born into, and also the kind of climate that eventually would turn into what we know today as the Harlem Renaissance. So for people like Du Bois and Washington, who had very different, and even you could add in there a person like Marcus Garvey, who had all very different ways of thinking about Black progress, it nonetheless was a time of great possibility and of great hope. Now, it was also defined by some very, very important moments, one of which is in 1914, about a decade later, the outbreak of the First World War. And part of what that does for people like Hughes and folks that were becoming adults, high school students and adults during this time, is that it opened up a space for travel, right? So part of what happens is that labor agents come into the South and they begin to recruit African Americans to come and to fill up the vacuum that is left by all of these white male soldiers that go off to war. The other thing that happens is that in various parts of the South and sort of, I would say sort of Southwest a little bit, is that there was a major boll weevil epidemic in that first decade of the 20th century. And what it did is it sort of upset the apple cart of sharecropping, which became the system that replaced legalized slavery. So when you have all of these kinds of conditions that are set up, the other big piece that we have to talk about is the persistent phenomenon of psychic and physical violence that is perpetuated against African Americans from the end of the 19th century, as I said, all the way through the Second World War and even into the Civil Rights Movement. And that is most notably manifested in lynching. So this is the landscape upon which Hughes writes his poetry and his short stories. So what happens is that we get this massive migration of African Americans from the South to the North, from rural spaces into urban spaces, and they go to places like New York, which is where Hughes eventually went, to Chicago, which is where he sets one of his novels, partially where he sets one of his novels, to out west, to Los Angeles and into Oakland, to places like Philadelphia and to DC. And what we get is a burgeoning of art and literature and music that we know as the Harlem Renaissance. I want to read one more part that I think that from the Souls of Black Folk, because I think sort of ideologically it helps to set up the kind of work and thinking that somebody like Hughes would have entered into. He says, to be really true, all of these ideals must be melted and welded into one. The training of the schools we need today more than ever, the training of deft hands, quick eyes and ears, and above all, the broader, deeper, higher culture of gifted minds and pure hearts. The power of the ballot we need in sheer self-defense, else what shall save us from a second slavery? Freedom, too, the long sought, we still seek, the freedom of life and limb, the freedom to work and think, the freedom to love and aspire. Work, culture, liberty, all these we need, not singly but together, not successively but together, each growing and aiding each and all striving toward that vaster ideal that swims before the Negro people, the ideal of human brotherhood gained through the unifying ideal of race, the ideal of fostering and developing the traits and talents of the Negro, not in opposition to or contempt for other races, but rather in large conformity to the greater ideals of the American public, in order that someday on American soil, two world races may give each to each those characteristics both so sadly lack. We could be reading that today, couldn't we? It was into such a social, political, and intellectual space that Hughes would develop. Hughes's parents, James Hughes and Carrie Langston, divorced when Hughes was a young child and his father moved to Mexico. Hughes was raised by his grandmother until he was 13, when he moved to Lincoln, Illinois, to live with his mother and her new husband before the entire family eventually settled in Cleveland, Ohio. Many of his experiences as a young boy being raised by his grandmother are reflected in his novel Not Without Laughter, which he published in 1930. The protagonist, Sandy's early years are predominantly affected by his grandmother and her Christian values. Ultimately, however, Sandy does not follow the ways of his grandmother. The reader wonders if Hughes might be arguing that the answer for the modern black person in early 20th century America might be found in something other than the church. The novel begins with a storm, foreshadowing the struggles inherent in the novel's binaries: old and young, sacred and secular, the haves and the have-nots, urban and rural. And the novel ends with Sandy's migration to Chicago and immersion in one of the major cultural art forms of the city, the blues. It is the blues that eventually helps to shape the sound and the timbre and the rhythm of Hughes's own work. And it is the sound of the people for Hughes. It's the sound of the everyday, of the masses. And he was fiercely committed to making an art form that would be connectable to African Americans. Before Hughes migrated to New York, he spent his early years in Illinois, where he began writing poetry and was even selected as class poet. After graduating from high school, he spent a year in Mexico with his father, and then he attended Columbia University in New York City, but he didn't remain in school. After holding a bunch of odd jobs like assistant cook and launderer and busboy, in 1923, Hughes traveled abroad on a freighter to Senegal and to Nigeria and the Cameroons and to Belgian Congo and Angola and Guinea. And then he later traveled throughout Europe to Italy and France and Spain and eventually to Russia. But when he returned to the States, Hughes received a scholarship to Lincoln University here in Pennsylvania, and he got his BA in 1929. Lincoln is very, very, very proud of Hughes. The library is named for him. He went on to, later in 1943, he got an honorary doctorate from Lincoln and was also earlier awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship in 1935 and a Rosenwald Fellowship in 1940. As I said, Hughes had a particular love for jazz and the blues, and that became a critical influence on his writing. Moreover, he was really interested in capturing the sounds of black people, the way that they expressed themselves in myriad forms. Again, in Not Without Laughter, he thinks about, as he does in one of his later short stories, which is called The Blues I'm Playing, he thinks about the spirit of the Harlem Renaissance, or New Negro movement, as it's also called. In that novel and in the story, Hughes formally asks the questions concerning the function of the aesthetic production that he attempts to work out in the novel. For Hughes, the major questions to ponder at the end of the movement as he's moving forward into the 1930s and the 1940s seems to be, to whom does African American art belong? To what do black people owe their supreme allegiance? And when we examine the totality of his work, it seems that Hughes rejects any sort of art that alienates the artist from his or her own intimate community, or even perhaps a larger one. In his essay, The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain, which becomes part of a famous debate between him and a man named George Schuyler, Hughes argues, we younger Negro artists who create now intend to express our individual dark-skinned selves without fear or shame. If white people are pleased, we are glad. If they are not, it doesn't matter. We know we are beautiful and ugly too. The tom-tom cries and the tom-tom laughs. If colored people are pleased, we are glad. If they are not, their displeasure doesn't matter either. We build our temples for tomorrow, strong as we know how, and we stand on top of the mountain, free within ourselves. But for many critics, Hughes should not have been so free. One complained, quote, "It doesn't matter to me whether every poem in the book is true to life. Why should it be paraded before the American public by a Negro author as being typical or representative of the Negro? Bad enough to have white authors holding up our imperfections to public gaze. Our aim ought to be to present to the general public, already misinformed both by well-meaning and malicious writers, our higher aims and aspirations and our better selves." It's a really relevant question. It's a question that comes out all the time around what is the best way for African Americans to express the totality of their experiences. Is it through the art of Tyler Perry? Is it only through the art of Toni Morrison, right? It is a very, very relevant, up-to-the-moment question. Hughes wrote 16 books of poems, 2 novels, 3 collections of short stories, 4 volumes of editorial and documentary fiction, 20 plays, children's poetry, musicals, operas, 3 autobiographies, a dozen radio and television scripts, and a dozen or so of magazine articles. And as if he didn't have enough to do, he edited 7 anthologies. He died of cancer on May 22nd, 1967. His residence at 20 East 127th Street in Harlem has been given the landmark status by the New York City Preservation Commission, and his block of East 127th Street has been renamed Langston Hughes Place. One critic who calls him the poet of the people says, "We don't forget Hughes today, because so much of his work still startles with its unapologetic blend of common sense and sardonic disapproval, its position of integrity between bitterness and complacency that appeals to readers of all backgrounds." Thank you.
Good afternoon. By Langston Hughes, will V-Day be me day too? Over there, World War II. Dear fellow Americans, I write this letter hoping times will be better when this war is through. I'm a tan-skinned Yank driving a tank. I ask, will V-Day be me day too? I wear a U.S. uniform. I've done the enemy much harm. I've driven back the Germans and the Japs from Burma to the Rhine. On every battle line, I've dropped defeat into the fascist's lap. I am a Negro American out to defend my land. Army, Navy, Air Corps, I am there. I take munitions through. I fight or stevedore too. I face death the same as you do, everywhere. I've seen my buddy lying where he fell. I've watched him dying. I promised him that I would try to make our land a land where his son could be a man, and there'd be no Jim Crow birds left in our sky. This is what I want to know. When we see victories glow, will you still let old Jim Crow hold me back? When all those foreign folks who've waited, Italians, Chinese, Danes, are liberated, will I still be ill-fated because I am black? Here in my native land, Will the Jim Crow law still stand? Will Dixie lynch me still when I return? Or will you, comrades in arms, from the factories and the farms, have learned what this war was fought for us to learn? When I take off my uniform, will I be safe from harm? Or will you do me as the Germans did the Jews? When I've helped this world to save, shall I still be color's slave? Or will victory change your antiquated views? I can't say I didn't fight to smash the fascist might. You can't say I wasn't with you in each battle, as a soldier and a friend. When this war comes to an end, will you herd me in a Jim Crow car like cattle? Or will you stand up like a man at home and take your stand for democracy? That's all I ask of you. When we lay the guns away to celebrate our victory day, will V-Day be me day too? That's what I want to know. Sincerely, G.I. Joe. Justice. That justice is a blind goddess, is a thing to which we black our wise. Her bandage highs to festering sores that once perhaps were eyes. And still here. I've been scared and battered, my hopes the wind done scattered. Snow has frizzed me, sun has baked me. Looks like between 'em they done tried to make me stop laughing, stop loving, stop living. But I don't care, I'm still here.
Thank You Ma'am by Langston Hughes. She was a large woman with a large purse that had everything in it but hammer and nails. It had a long strap and she carried it slung across her shoulder. It was about 11 o'clock at night and she was walking alone when a boy ran up behind her and tried to snatch her purse. The strap broke with the single tug the boy gave it from behind, but the boy's weight and the weight of the purse combined caused him to lose his balance, so instead of taking off full blast, as he had hoped, the boy fell on his back on the sidewalk and his legs flew up. The large woman simply turned around and kicked him right square in his blue jean sitter. Then she reached down, picked the boy up by his shirt front, and shook him until his teeth rattled. After that, the woman said, "Pick up my pocketbook, boy, and give it here." She still held him, but she bent down enough to permit him to stoop and pick up her purse. Then she said, "Now ain't you ashamed of yourself?" Firmly gripped by his shirt front, the boy said, "Yes'm." The woman said, "What did you want to do it for?" The boy said, "I didn't aim to." She said, "You a lie." But that time, 2 or 3 people passed, stopped, turned to look, and some stood watching. "If I turn you loose, will you run?" asked the woman. "Yes'm," said the boy. "Then I won't turn you loose," said the woman. She did not release him. "I'm very sorry, lady, I'm sorry," whispered the boy. And your face is dirty. I got a great mind to wash your face for you. Ain't you got nobody home to tell you to wash your face?" "No, ma'am," said the boy. "Then it will get washed this evening," said the large woman, starting up the street, dragging the frightened boy behind her. He looked as if he were 14 or 15, frail and willow wild, in tennis shoes and blue jeans. The woman said, "You ought to be my son. I would teach you right from wrong. Least I can do right now is to wash your face. Are you hungry?" "No, ma'am," said the being dragged boy. "I just want you to turn me loose." "Was I bothering you when I turned that corner?" asked the woman. "No, ma'am." "But you put yourself in contact with me," said the woman. "If you think that contact is not going to last a while, you got another thought coming. When I get through with you, sir, you are going to remember Miss Luella Bates Washington Jones." Sweat popped out on the boy's face and he began to struggle. Mrs. Jones stopped, jerked him around in front of her, put a half Nelson about his neck, and continued to drag him up the street. When she got to her door, she dragged the boy inside, down a hall, and into a large kitchenette furnished room at the rear of the house. She switched on the light and left the door open. The boy could hear other roomers laughing and talking in the large room. Some of their doors were open too, so he knew he and the woman were not alone. The woman still had him by the neck in the middle of her room. She said, "What is your name?" "Roger," answered the boy. "Then, Roger, you go to that sink and wash your face," said the woman, whereupon she turned him loose at last. Roger looked at the door, looked at the woman, looked at the door, and went to the sink. "Let the water run until it gets warm," she said. "Here's a clean towel." "You gonna take me to jail?" asked the boy, bending over the sink. "Not with that face, I would not take you nowhere," said the woman. "Here I am trying to get home to cook me a bite to eat, and you snatch my pocketbook. Maybe you ain't been to your supper either, late as it be, have you?" "There's nobody home at my house," said the boy. "Then we'll eat," said the woman. "I believe you're hungry, or been hungry, to try to snatch my pocketbook." "I wanted a pair of blue suede shoes," said the boy. "Well, you didn't have to snatch my pocketbook to get some suede shoes," said Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones. "You could have asked me, ma'am." The water dripping from his face, the boy looked at her. There was a long pause, a very long pause. After he had dried his face, and not knowing what else to do, dried it again, the boy turned around, wondering what next. The door was open. He could make a dash for it down the hall. He could run, 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 run. The woman was sitting on the daybed. After a while, she said, "I were young once, and I wanted things I could not get." There was another long pause. The boy's mouth opened. Then he frowned. But not knowing he frowned. The woman said, "Mm-hmm. You thought I was going to say, but didn't you? You thought I was going to say, but I didn't snatch people's pocketbooks. Well, I wasn't going to say that." Pause. Silence. "I have done things, too, which I would not tell you, son, neither tell God if he didn't already know. So you get down while I fix us something to eat. You might rub that comb through your hair so you will look presentable." In another corner of the room, behind a screen, was a gas plate and an icebox. Mrs. Jones got up and went behind the screen. The woman did not watch the boy to see if he was going to run now, nor did she watch her purse, which she left behind her on the daybed. But the boy took care to sit on the far side of the room where he thought she could easily see him out of the corner of her eye, if she wanted to. He did not trust the woman, not to trust him, and he did not want to be mistrusted now. "Do you need somebody to go to the store?" asked the boy. "Maybe to get some milk or something?" "Don't believe I do," said the woman, "unless you just want sweet milk yourself. I was going to make cocoa out of this canned milk I got here." "That will be fine," said the boy. She heated some lima beans and yam she had in the icebox, made the cocoa, and set the table. The woman did not ask the boy anything about where he lived or his folks or anything else that would embarrass him. Instead, as they ate, she told him about her job in a hotel beauty shop that stayed open late, what the work was like, and how all kinds of women came in and out, blondes, redheads, and Spanish. Then she cut him a half of her 10-cent cake. "Eat some more, son," she said. When they were finished eating, she got up and said, "Now here, take this $10 and buy yourself some blue suede shoes. And next time, do not make the mistake of latching onto my pocketbook, nor nobody else's, because shoes come by devilish like that will burn your feet. I got to get my rest now, but I wish you would behave yourself, son, from here on in." She led him down the hall to the front door and opened it. "Good night. Behave yourself, boy," she said, looking out into the street. The boy wanted to say something else other than "Thank you, ma'am," to Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones, but he couldn't do so as he turned at the barren stoop and looked back at the large woman in the door. He barely managed to say thank you before she shut the door, and he never saw her again.
I'm going to read 3 poems, and by the time Matt and I had agreed on this date, on this event, in the fall, I went looking at some of the poems by Hughes, to look again, and it was so striking to read some of these poems and then think about where we are today. It's amazing. And so the poems I have here are Hughes's, but they speak so much, they're so prescient in terms of, speaking to our times. The first one is democracy. Democracy will not come today, this year, nor ever through compromise and fear. I have as much right as the other fellow has to stand on my 2 feet and own the land. I tire so of hearing people say, let things take their course. Tomorrow is another day. I do not need any freedom when I'm dead. I cannot live on tomorrow's bread. Freedom is a strong seed planted in a great need. I live here too. I want freedom just as you. The second one is probably my favorite of Hughes's poems, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. If you remember, Dr. Lucky was speaking about the travels that Langston Hughes made, especially to Africa, many parts of Africa. I still remain, even today, I'm kind of jealous and embarrassed that Langston Hughes has traveled to more parts of Africa than I have, even from that continent, but it speaks to how global he was, if you think about the many places he's traveled. So the Negro speaks of rivers. I've known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo and it lured me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. And finally, this is a little bit longer poem, but I think we are concluding with this. The title is Let America Be America Again. I wanted to think about that, in terms of the contemporary slogan, the official slogan of our times. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plains seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor white fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery's scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. I am the full young man, full of strength and hope, tangled in the ancient endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab of the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work demand, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker sold to the machine. I am the Negro servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean, beaten yet today. Oh, pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker battered through the years. Yet, I'm the one who dreamt a basic dream in the old world while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true that even yet its mighty daring sinks in every brick and stone, in every furrow turned, that's made America the land it has become. Oh, I am the man who sailed through early seas in search of what I meant to be my home. For I'm the one who left dark Ireland's shore and Poland's plain and England's grassy lea, and torn from black Africa's strand I came to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shut down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed and all the songs we've sung and all the hopes we've had and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be, the land where every man and woman is free. The land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must take back our land again. America. Oh yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we, the people, must redeem the land. The mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain, all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again.